Well, I haven't uploaded around here in a long time, but a lot of people have been asking me strategy-related questions about the new Toontown Corporate Clash, and I'd figured I'd answer all of them. So welcome to the ultimate strategy guide for Toontown Corporate Clash. In this video, I'll be going over, and it's a lot, leveling up, training points, cogs, .exe cogs, V2.0 cogs, basic gag changes, prestige basics, soaking and jumping, buildings, tune-up trap, lure, sound, squirt, zap, throw, drop, and my predictions for the early, mid, and late game. Now, if you want to click on any of those, by all means, go right ahead if you're not here to watch the whole video. I don't know how long it is, but it's sure going to be extremely long to get through all of this. Now, I'm going to say this at the very beginning of the video. The people that work on Corporate Clash are changing the game. They are rebalancing a few gags here and there, and what I say may not be true in a month or a year or anything like that, but the core concepts are still there. So, if anything does change, I will most likely put it somewhere, either on my Twitter or talk about it on Twitch. So, I'm not here to advertise for that. I do want to say that sometimes these things do change. Keep informed and I'll let you guys know what I find. So we're going to start off with leveling up. In Toontown Corporate Clash, it's a brand new system called leveling up, and you level from 0 to 80, and it takes away a lot of the laugh point tasks that the old Toontown had. Now, let's just go through them all at once. Every level you gain, you get a laugh point. Every 5 levels you gain, you get 500 beans extra to hold on your person. So if you start off with 500 to hold, then once you reach level 5, you can hold 1,000. Level 10, 1,500, and so on and so forth. Every 10 levels, though, you get to be able to hold 10 more gags. So at level 10, instead of holding 20 gags, you can hold 30. Now here's where it gets a bit complicated. Level 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 28, 38, 48, 58, 68, and 78, you get what's called a training point. And this is where I'm going to be going into my next segment. What are training points? Well, you don't train for specific gag tracks by doing tasks in Corporate Clash. You don't do that anymore. What you do is, once you get a training point at those levels that I said beforehand, you get to put them towards any gag track that you want. And obviously you start off with 2, but you can have up to 7, or you can have 6, or 5, or 4. Doesn't matter to me what you use your training points for. Just know that it takes 2 training points to get a new gag track, and it takes 1 training point to prestige it. I'll go into prestiging later. So what would be my recommendation? Depending on how many gag tracks you really want, I'd say get all the gag tracks first, and then prestige it as you level up later on. So now let's move over to the cogs section. If you didn't already know, there are higher level cogs in the game than 12. I know, it's shocking, but this makes the game a lot harder. This makes the game a little bit more challenging, and I thoroughly enjoyed that aspect of it. Now, I'm gonna put on the screen right now a list of all the level cogs from 1 to 50 and their health. I did this on my own via the equation x plus 1 times x plus 2. Simple. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that. One feature that people don't really understand is .exe cogs. And if you don't know what a .exe cog is, it's the same cog but darker suit, and there's a little bit more to it. Each .exe cog has 50% more health and 20% more damage. And also, as a fun little thing that they added, .exe cogs have a higher chance of missing a gag, which is wonderful, and it makes the game, again, a lot harder. Again, I'm going to put it up on the screen. Right here is all the cog levels from 1 to 50, and each of their health as a .exe cog. Now, if you look down there, that level 50, yeah, that bad boy's got 4,000 health. I really hope that's not real. Just know that .exe cogs are a lot harder than regular cogs, and that you should be wary about them, but they're not too impossible, and you can easily take them out with well-placed gags and strategy. V2.0 Cogs. I haven't really delved too much deep into these, but I have read the toon tips, and I might as well let you guys know that V2.0 Cogs, they have their original health as a regular cog. Cool, done. But once they get turned into a skelecog, their health is negated by 50%, so say they had 100 health to begin with, their health is now 50. Simple. But their damage is upped by 50%, so it's best for everyone to get those guys out of the ring as fast as possible. And, as an added bonus, you can kill the Skelecog while also killing the core cog, meaning that if it had 100 health, and if you do 150 damage to it, you'll kill the whole cog. Easy. One thing about cogs that I would like you all to keep in mind is that cogs tend to attack the toon that did the most damage to them. Just keep that in mind as you go down the road, because you might be targeted, you might not be targeted, you can use that to your advantage. They tend to target people that do the most damage to them, but not always. And now, dare I say it, there is such a thing as a V2.0.exe. Trust me, it's scary. Basically, what you have to know for the V2.0.exe is that the .exe traits apply before the V2.0 traits. And what I mean by that is, say a normal cog does 20 damage. A .exe version of that cog would do 24 damage. However, the V2.0 Skelecog would do 36 damage. It applies the 20% damage boost before the 50% damage boost. Same goes for the health of the cog. Now that we all understand that, let's go into a different topic, the gags. I'll delve into each gag on their own, and we'll see what they do exactly, but I wanted to let you guys know of basic gag changes that take some getting used to. Let me tell you, they take some getting used to. For example, throw is now right before drop, and squirt comes before throw. That's the one thing that takes a lot of getting used to. Also, it looks like Toonup has been kind of nerfed. Lure has had their accuracy lowered a bit at the very beginning, but it turns out to be pretty nice at the very end. I would say it's a bit more balanced now. Trap has been buffed hard. Sound has been nerfed. Squirt has kind of relatively stayed the same. Throw has been buffed a little bit recently, actually. And drop has been hella buffed. With these new changes, there's a lot more strategy that can be involved, and I would predict that there's gonna be a lot more usage of different gags as the game goes on further down the road, as people figure out what they need to get done. And a small reminder I want to throw out there for all gags is any decimal point always rounds up. Period. So that's with the basic gag changes. Again, I'm going to go through all the gags later down, but for now we're going to talk about prestiging. Prestiging is a bit difficult to understand, but if you think of it as this, you know how in Toontown you could plant a gag at your estate, grow a tree, and that tree will have a buff to it, like 10% damage increase. Prestiging is just like that, but with a little bit more flair to it. You prestige a gag track by adding an extra training point to it, and the way this thing works is people have been saying that you could get either 7 gag tracks and 1 prestiged gag track, or you can get 6 gag tracks and 3 prestiges, or you can get 5 gag tracks and 5 prestiges, or 4 and 4, 3 and 3, and 2 and 2. So, as far as any recommendations go, I would say if you're gonna play it safe, I would go 6 and 3. I'm risking it a bit myself, going 5 and 5, but I would say go 6 and 3 to start with to be a little bit safe, because prestiging a gag track is actually very useful, and I'll go into each gag track and their prestiges in just a bit. Also, prestiges are not permanent. You can reset your prestiged gag, but it does cost a lot of beans. Buildings. Buildings in Corporate Clash are a lot harder. There are more cogs in the buildings. There's a bit of a difference between buildings in, say, Toontown Rewritten and Corporate Clash. For example, in Toontown Rewritten, buildings have a core multiplier by 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, and 3. Now in Corporate Clash, the multiplier is already doubled like there's an invasion outside. It's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, because Corporate Clash's buildings have 6 stories as a max, which is insanely difficult, and I'm excited to try them. Another fun feature with buildings in Corporate Clash is that they are not affected by the invasions outside. It doesn't really matter, as the buildings already have the multiplier XP, and I would say, as far as training goes, buildings might be the best option to train with. I know in Cellbot HQ, if there's an invasion out, it's times 3, but buildings, if you survive the building and you go to a 4-story building, that's 5 times XP on the top floor. And if you find a good group of people to train with, and you start using the cog on the top floor to train your gags with, you'll get a lot of XP and eventually level up those gags really, really quickly to prepare you for the later parts of the game. So, if there's any training advice I can give you guys right now, is to try to look for buildings and do them with friends. That doesn't give you guys permission to go steal buildings from other people. That doesn't give you guys permission to go green people specifically because you want to train trap and you forgot to pick lure. Okay? Okay. Glad we got that out of the way. Coach Z will be thanking me later. So now let's get into soaking and jumping. Soaking and jumping is a new feature with Squirt and Zap. If you don't know what Zap is, if you squirt beforehand, Zap does a ton of damage and has a very high accuracy. Basically what soaking and jumping is, if 2 cogs are soaked in the same battle and you zap one, it will jump to the next one and zap that one as well. And it can hit multiple cogs, which is a really cool feature. There are some things to note about it. Let me draw up a diagram for you. Say you're facing 4 cogs and you have 4 toons. Say 3 people squirt the left, left middle, and middle right cog. You haven't have a zap that does 30 damage. On the first soaked cog, that damage will up to 90. That cog will take 90 damage. But since the other 2 cogs to the right of it are also soaked, that zap will jump to the right twice. However, there is a bit of a drawback. Each time that it jumps, the damage will decrease from 3 times to 2 times back to 1 times. I'll probably go over this again when I talk about Squirt and Zap prestiges, but I might as well talk about it now. If you prestige Squirt and you squirt a cog, the cog to the left and the right of it will also be soaked. And if you prestige Zap, that damage lost earlier will go from 3 times to 2.5 to 2 times to 1.5. And I set an extra one in there because, yes, Prestige Zap can jump an extra time and hit all 4 cogs. There's one key feature about jumping that I forgot to mention. Jumping typically favors going to the right. Although it can go to the left, it typically favors going to the right. So it's a really good idea to soak the leftmost cog, or the left 3 most cogs, if you have Prestige Squirt, first, and then once you zap, hit the far left cog that is soaked, and you will do a lot of damage with the jumping. It is a lot to take in, it is a lot to understand, but hopefully I did it justice. Now we're going to go through each gag track, and I'm going to explain to you all the prestiges that go with it and all the changes that have been made. And believe me, some of these changes are really, really cool, and the prestiges are amazing as well. So let's kick it off with Toonup. So, Toonup has a 70% accuracy of hitting, and the Prestige Toonup heals 50% of what you do to the group to yourself. I think Toonup is a really valuable resource as of right now, because of that 50% healing. We've all been in those situations where everyone in the group is down a lot of laugh, and you have to be the one that steps up saying, hey, I will be the one to tune up, you guys worry about destroying the cogs. However, with Prestige Toonup, that no longer happens. Prestiging this tune-up is a really good idea if you want to keep your team alive. A small fact that I found that might be fixed in the game later on, I don't know if it's a feature or a bug, but apparently, as of right now, when you prestige your tune-up and you heal someone that already has full health, you will still get the bonus healing from the prestige to yourself. Personally, I think this is a really good idea, and I hope it's a feature and not a bug. Let's move on to Trap. As I said before, Trap has been extremely buffed. And again, it still has 100% accuracy, like we all know, and it requires Lure to work. However, they went a step further. A prestiged Trap gag can take the level of the cog that you're targeting, multiply the level by 3, and add it to the damage. That's a lot to say, but let me break it down. Let's say you're facing off against a level 10 cog. A sack of marbles would normally do 60 damage. However, if you prestige that sack of marbles, it will take the level 10, multiply that by 3, and add that to the trap gag that you used, and the marbles will now do 90 instead of 60. The max damage you can do with a level 50 cog with a TNT is 390. Keep that in mind, it comes up a bit later. Now let's talk about Lure. Lure is a tricky little bugger. So, the accuracy of each lure gag increases as you get more gags. The $1 lure has a 50% chance of hitting, and the $5 lure has a 60% chance of hitting. The $10 lure has a 70, and the $50 lure has an 80. Now let's talk about Lure Decay. Lure Decay is a new feature added by Corporate Clash that adds a little bit less reliance towards lure, because as we all know, if you lure a cog, they stay, and they don't do anything else unless they're unlured, knockbacked, or sounded. However, this thing called Lure Decay puts kind of a cap on it. Let me explain it. For each round that goes by, the chance that the cog will miss a gag is lower. So, for example, the first round, the cog has a 100% chance of being hit by a gag. There's no way that gag can miss. The second round, it goes down to 95%. So there's a 5% chance that the cog will miss the gag thrown at it on the second round. The third round, it goes down to 90. Fourth round goes down to 85, and the fifth round goes down to 80. Say you're on the fourth round and you're at an 85% chance of it hitting. What happens when the gag is at 95% chance of hitting? The Lure Decay will take the gag accuracy of the gag that's being used if it's higher than the Lure Decay itself. It won't lower the accuracy of the squirt gag used if it's 95%. Instead, it'll take the 95% and use it as such. Now let's talk about Prestige Lure. So this is gonna be pretty simple. When cogs typically have knockback, it's a knockback plus 50% damage. Lure Prestige does 65% instead of 50. Now this can be used a lot with strategy with throw, and I did know this for a fact, that a Prestige Birthday Cake along with Prestige Lure can combine and do 200 damage. A good way to visualize Prestige Lure in terms of strategy would be having it be changed from 1/2 to 2/3, because 65% is practically 2/3. Credit to Megastoop for thinking that up. Now let's talk about sound. As I said before, sound was heavily nerfed, as you can see from these damages on the screen. Opera does a max of 65 damage, which is a lot less than what we had beforehand. However, let's go over Prestige sound really quickly. Take the top level cog you're facing at the moment, divide that level by 2, and then add that to the damage. For example, with the level 10 cog, any sound gag that you use would add a +5 to it. This is going to be a little bit hard to keep track of as you go down the line, but if you use a lot of math skills, you can easily use this to your advantage. Now let's move on to Squirt. Squirt is a bit of a tough one. The damages have been relatively same as they have been, just a few tweaks here and there. There is also another feature added to it called Soak. Soak adds the damage from Zap. Squirting Flower and Glass of Water soak for 1 round. Squirt Gun and Water Balloon soak for 2 rounds. Seltzer and Fire Hose soak for 3 rounds. And Storm Cloud and Geyser soak for 4 rounds. Now I know what you might be thinking. Is the first round that you squirt the cog the first round? And the answer is no. Think about it like Lure. The round after the cog has been soaked is the first round. Prestige Squirt can soak the left and the right cog as you squirt the middle one. Prestige Squirt also adds 1 more round of soak, and it grants a negative 20% debuff to the cogs. Now this has nothing to do with damage, but it means that the cog has a lower chance of missing a gag, or it means the gag has a higher chance of hitting the cog. Now another thing you might be thinking is, if you zap a cog that has been soaked, does the soak go away? And the answer is no. The soak only goes away if the cog dies or the soak actually ends. Using Zap might be a very good tool in the later game. Speaking of Zap, let's get into Zap at the moment. Zap has a 30% accuracy normally, but when a cog is soaked, that accuracy ups to 90%. Zap is the carrier of the jump mechanic. Zap does not jump to the same cog more than once. And if 2 zaps are used on the same cog that can jump to the next cog over, the lowest zap used will be the one that jumps. Prestige Zap can travel through unsoaked cog. So say you're facing 3 cogs. The left and the right cog have been soaked. You zap the left cog, that zap will travel through the unsoaked cog and hit the cog on the right as well. Zap tends to favor traveling to the right rather than to the left. Another defect that comes with Zap is that Zap gags don't stack. What I mean by that is, say you use 2 throw gags, there's an extra yellow damage that pops up after the throw is used. Zap doesn't have that feature. But what Zap does have to put it ahead of the rest is what I like to call double jump. Let me break it down for you. So let's say you're facing 2 cogs and both of them are soaked. You have 2 tunes on your side, both with Zap. You zap the one on the left, and your friend zaps the one on the right. Both zaps will hit the cog with 3 times damage. However, both zaps will also jump to the next cog over, doing extra damage to them. This is something that not too many people are aware of, and you all can use this in strategy down the road. Now let's get through Throw. Throw has a 75% accuracy and has been a bit buffed. Never forget that Throw is a viable option to kill a cog. Prestige Throw adds 10% damage to it, so it's just like organic. Think of it as that. Now let's go into one of my favorite changes, Drop. Drop has a 50% accuracy at first, but if you prestige it, it goes to 70% accuracy. I mentioned this earlier, but you know that extra yellow damage that pops up after you use the same gag in the same round. That damage is plus 20% the damage that has already been done. However, with Drop, if 2 tunes use Drop in the same round, that damage will go from 20% to 30%. And if 3 tunes use Drop in the same round, that damage will go from 30% to 40%. And if all 4 tunes use Drop in the same round, that will go from 40% to 50% increase. That is a knocked back lure, but with Drop. Let's say all 4 tunes in your group do the piano, which is 220 damage. You multiply that by 4, it does 880. But if you times that by 1.5, which is the damage that it comes afterward, it turns out to be 1320. Now, since we've gone over each gag track individually, got all of its prestiges down, let me give you guys my predictions for the early, middle, and late game. I'm predicting the early game will be from Toontown Central to the beginning of Daisy's Gardens. And the middle game will start at Daisy's Gardens and end typically around the Berg. Late game will be Acorn Acres and Drowsy Dreamland and beyond. So for the early game, Trap, Lure, Sound, and Throw are the best choices to have. Trap is very overpowered right now, and Lure and Throw can be easily used to get rid of a higher level cog and making sure it doesn't do any damage to you. Sound is usually good for the lower level cogs. Now in the middle game, Trap, Lure, Throw, Sound, Squirt, and Zap are the main gags to use. I know that's almost all of them, but again, Trap is overpowered as of right now. Lure is going to be a really good option to have. Throw is going to be good. Sound's going to be good even in the middle game. Squirt and Zap are going to be kind of on the rise, but the middle game is kind of just all the gags. In the late game, with higher level cogs, drop might be needed a lot more than you think. Also in the late game, Toonup is going to be very important to be prestiged. A lot of the higher level cogs will do a lot of damage, especially the .exe cogs and the skeleton cogs from the V2.0 cogs. So it's a good idea to have a lot of Toonup on you, or a lot of Toonup capable people. You are free to debate in the comments. I personally think in this game, drop is going to be a little bit more overpowered than trap. I'm interested in hearing all of your guys' opinions, and we can talk strategy down in the comments below. But I've kept you guys long enough in this video, so I would like to thank everyone for watching this far. Also, in my analysis of this game, if I manage to gloss over something or miss something entirely, please let me know in the comments. Who knows, there might be more videos like this in the future. So, thank you guys so much again for watching. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.